It's small, it's jerky. Sometimes you can't even get it. Now imagine if it were like this. Full screen, TV quality, instant. Whoever can make this happen will be rich beyond their wildest dreams. Tonight you'll meet a man who said he could deliver just that. But was he really a great innovator or just a great con man?
I wanna rock and roll all night. We party every day.
You're looking at footage from iBash, the largest internet concert ever. This webcast musical extravaganza was supposed to launch revolutionary new technology that would allow people to watch video like this on the internet, as if they were watching TV.
Welcome to Pixelon's Bash. So many celebrities tonight. Betty Ford has a booth backstage. Yeah.
The company behind iBash, Pixelon, spent $16 million on the show. David Spade and web babe Cindy Margolis hosted as an all-star lineup performed. Faith Hill, the Dixie Chicks, Tony Bennett, even The Who reunited. Some of these stars were so high on the prospects for Pixelon, they didn't just want money, they demanded stock.
The internet is here, you've all got to deal with it, and we're here at the forefront because Pixelon is all about that.
What nobody knew at the time was that this man, Adam Michael Fain, the internet guru behind Pixelon, was actually a convicted con man, a fugitive on Virginia's 10 Most Wanted list, named David Kim Stanley. I met Stanley in a Virginia jail, and how he wound up here is an amazing story.
Who are you?
I'm a child of God who made a mistake and who has suffered miserably for that.
Truthful?
Truthful.
Smooth talker?
Very articulate.
Salesman?
The best.
So how did a convicted con man with a fake identity almost become the king of the internet? To understand that, you need to go back to the tiny town of Wise, Virginia during the 1980s, back when David Stanley was just a young man considering his future. His father, the Reverend Robert Stanley, runs the Beverly Hills Tabernacle here. David attended Bible college, but dropped out, and some say he started preaching the gospel of greed. He started an investment company promising huge returns to these small-town folk. He put their life savings into risky oil and gas deals and wound up losing hundreds of thousands of their dollars.
How do you make up for that? Can you?
I've tried for the last 11 years since I was sentenced to make up for that. Can I erase it? No.
Stanley says he never meant any harm, but Gerald Gray, a Wise County special prosecutor, doesn't buy it. He says Stanley flat out stole that money.
What I see in David Stanley is a genuine con artist. David made promises to people, they invested funds with him, and they learned much later that he had lied to them and actually stolen their money.
Nora Sue Strouth still can't believe the man who she says stole thousands from her is the same nice young man who used to watch her play the organ in his daddy's church.
I needed that money to live, and I went through those 2 surgeries needing my money. And he stole it, he embezzled it. He's the scum of the earth.
Why does it go on? They refer to you as the man who fleeced his father's flock, and every type of derogatory term you can think of that deals with being a con man.
It goes on here because it's scandalous and it's sensationalistic, and it sells newspapers.
And it goes on because David Stanley pled guilty to over 50 fraud-related charges in 2 different states. His sentence was to repay his victims and then serve 8 years in prison. But while on a court-ordered work release program, he ran away.
You really went undercover. You really tried to sneak away.
I had no choice. Had I not left, I wouldn't be talking to you here today.
Stanley says he ran because someone was trying to kill him, but the Virginia authorities say this is just another tall tale.
I think this is a story he made up just to try to justify what he did.
And Stanley didn't just skip out on his sentence. When his wife refused to go on the lam, he left her and their young child behind. And then he did everything he could to kill off David Kim Stanley.
First of all, I threw my driver's license away. Threw every trace of anything that might identify me as David Stanley. I threw all that away. I dyed my hair blonde. I put on 200 pounds. I did as much as I could do short of mutilation to change my appearance.
Stanley showed up several months later in the California mission town of San Juan Capistrano. Despite the alleged death threat, he was very much alive. In fact, he was a new man named Adam Michael Fain. He had a new wife, too, Sheila, who apparently believed everything he said. And soon they had a baby of their own.
He told me that he had a threat on his life. He told me, I can't tell you anymore, and I'm asking you not to ask me.
This, to me, is a great example of how persuasive Stanley is. Sheila only knew him for a few weeks before their marriage, and she knew he had a secret past. Still, she was enchanted by him. In her eyes, he's still a saint.
It didn't matter who he met. If they needed help, he gave it to them. And it didn't matter if they needed money and we didn't have it. He gave it to them. That's just the kind of man he was, and I have never met anyone in my life like him.
In addition to his new life, Stanley also had a new investment to pitch: internet technology. Though he had no formal training, Stanley claimed to have found what many tech companies are still looking for: a way to deliver high-quality video over the internet.
Pixelon was born, and at its helm, a convicted embezzler with a phony identity, preaching that honesty would be the key to their success.
Everybody that I deal with knows that I keep my word. Our word as Pixelon has to count.
Stanley was shopping his idea at the right time, the height of internet fever. Speculators were throwing money at high-tech startups. Incredibly, investors pledged $30 million to Pixelon without even doing a thorough background check, which would have revealed that Michael Fain was a complete fake. He didn't even have a social security card.
Everyone wanted what I was building.
Willful blindness of what may have existed.
Absolutely. The proposition was this: you can't have my social security number. You can't know about my past. If you want what I'm building at Pixelon, then you have to leave my past alone. That's the trade-off.
Pixelon was now one of the hottest companies on the web. There were deals with the Anaheim Angels and the Mighty Ducks, both owned by Disney, our parent company. Paramount, VH1, MTV, even the Republican National Party wanted Pixelon to put them on the net. But with success came greater risk that Stanley would be discovered.
No counting the nights I thought, gee, this is getting bigger than I ever thought it could.
But you kept going with it because
it burned inside of me.
He decided to tempt fate, and according to company insiders, he started promising he could deliver instant high-quality video over ordinary telephone lines. But was it just a big con? A former employee said Stanley was up to his old tricks.
I've been there, I've worked with him. He is a sociopath that will tell you anything that he needs to be able to get what he needs.
Gary DeVore was a video engineer at Pixelon, and he claimed the technology David Stanley supposedly created was not his at all.
It's not their technology. It is nothing but an MPEG technology that has been widely available to anybody in the world for the last 5 years.
DeVore says Pixelon couldn't live up to the hype, and to compensate, Stanley sometimes faked demonstrations.
So it was all just a charade?
Yeah, a giant, complex charade, correct.
Since then, other insiders have come forward to corroborate DeVore's claims. But David Stanley dismisses it all as slander.
Critics will say the technology, more evidence of a con.
What you're quoting is a piece of rubbish from a tabloid. No one qualified has ever criticized the viability or the validity of the technologies or of the patents that are in my name.
But they did question his ability to run Pixelon. While iBash had been great PR, it cost so much it nearly bankrupted the company. So the board kicked Stanley out.
Chris, what you've got is just your typical internet connection.
The new CEO is Peter Foley. He was hired to clean up the mess Stanley allegedly left behind, and he believes Stanley was up to no good.
He did not create the technology. He is not the technical genius that he wants people to believe.
So what was David Stanley telling people?
I've heard time and time again. He was telling them that we had certain capabilities that we did not have. And that's been verified and confirmed in written reports and depositions. He is a master, and he's a master at manipulating people.
Ironically, it was the internet that ended the charade. Just weeks after he was kicked out of Pixelon, somebody who knew Michael Fain spotted this wanted picture on the internet. Stanley heard the cops were coming and decided to turn himself in.
Did you have plans to return?
Of course. From the day I left, I planned to come back. And you can't argue with that, because I did.
And in a hearing last Thursday, the judge made sure he'd be sticking around. Stanley's allowed to work at home for a few hours a day, accompanied by a sheriff. Other than that, he'll be cooling his heels in jail while the judge ponders his fate.
And I don't know what I will do. I'll have to wait until the day of sentencing to determine exactly what the sentence will be.
So far, the judge has ordered that Stanley pay more than $80,000 to his victims. Stanley says no problem.
I'll raise the money.
And as for future jail time, the judge said he'll decide after he investigates what Stanley's been up to. And that could mean more trouble for David Kim Stanley.
As for Pixelon, it's reorganizing under the Chapter 11 bankruptcy law, and the company says it now has video technology that comes close to fulfilling the promises David Stanley made.